Welcome to Spotlight Sessions, where we shine a
What's
light
your
on
story?
incredible individuals. What does accessibility mean to you?
What's your mission? Welcome all to accessiBe's Spotlight Sessions, where we shine a light on incredible individuals and organizations and the work that they do. I'm your host, Josh Basil. I'm a C4-5 quadriplegic, paralyzed below my shoulders, and a power wheelchair user. I'm a community relations manager at accessiBe and a passionate disability rights advocate and trial attorney focused on breaking down barriers to access and inclusion for people with disabilities. Today on accessiBe Spotlight Sessions, we are joined by Dr. Donald Wood, the president and CEO at Muscular Dystrophy Association. Welcome, Don.
Thank you, Josh. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm so excited to have you on the program. I've been a big fan of Muscular Dystrophy Association for many years and the work that you're doing. So before we dive into the Muscular Dystrophy Association, I'd love to learn more about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Just so everybody gets a picture, I'm a white male with a full head of dark hair, no facial hair, in a blue button-down, button-collar shirt and a sports coat.
Thank you for sharing your visual description. That's awesome, Don.
Yeah, thank you for asking about my background. I've been involved with the Muscular Dystrophy Association now for almost 40 years. And I actually started out as an MDA research grantee back in the 70s.
Wow.
And I was studying, it was interesting because I started out my career at Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center in neurology. And I was studying muscle function, but basic muscle function. And the chairman of the neurology department came in one day, asked me what I was doing. And I was a postdoctoral fellow. And in the presence of this gentleman who was the head of the greatest neurology department in the country at that time, I was stammering and tongue struck, et cetera. And he looked at me, he said, well, why don't you do something useful with your research? And I looked at him and said, what? He said, study human muscle. And that's how I started studying human muscle. Eventually began to study muscle affected by muscle disease, the muscular dystrophies. And at that time, when I first started, it was an intellectual exercise, right? I had a theory, I had some ideas, etc. And the way I studied the human muscle was I needed muscle biopsies from people who had the disease. That led one day to my meeting the family of a son whose son had Duchenne muscular dystrophy, the most severe kind of that disorder. And that's when I learned that what I was doing made a huge difference to the people who suffered from these disorders. That changed my research focus from my head to my heart. And ever since then, I've made it my mission to find a cure for these diseases.
That's awesome. And it's amazing how those kind of moments in time kind of take you on different paths. And in your path led to kind of changing lives in the world and everything else within this unique subset of disability, which I love hearing stories like this. And tell us a little bit more about Muscular Dystrophy Association and the great work that you guys are doing.
The Muscular Dystrophy Association started in 1950. And people should know that virtually all the diseases, we cover all neuromuscular diseases. Virtually all of those diseases are genetic. What does that mean? It means that the defect that starts the disease originates in your DNA that we all have, right? It originates in a defect to the DNA. But think about this. In 1950, we did not know what the genetic material was. It would be 3 more years before we knew the genetic material was DNA. That's one. 2, we didn't know how muscle worked. We didn't know how muscle produced force. We didn't know how anything worked. So think of the dream of the folks that started the Muscular Dystrophy Association. They were in New York. They looked all over the world and all over the country for somebody that was studying muscular dystrophy. And you know how many people they found? One.
How many?
They found one individual in New York City, Cornell, who was studying muscular dystrophy. So what they did, their hope and their dreams, they knocked on apartment doors, they raised $5,000, and they took all that money and they gave it to him. Why? Because they knew that without new knowledge, they weren't going anywhere. They didn't have any idea how much new knowledge they needed. They just needed new knowledge. That's why the Muscular Dystrophy Association has been focused on research ever since the beginning. But the other thing we were focused on is because there was only one person in the country doing work in the area. So the founders recognized, we have to draw scientists and physicians into the field. So the other thing they did from the very beginning is they went out there and tried to recruit people to get an interest in muscular dystrophy by offering them fellowships or internships. The entire field of neuromuscular disease science and research was founded by the Muscular Dystrophy Association.
That's amazing.
When we have each year we have the biggest medical scientific conference in the world. We now have obviously thousands of folks. Our conference this year brought in over 2,000 people from 27 countries,
Wow.
the top people in the world studying these diseases and caring for people who have them. And what's interesting is you go to any one of those top people, they are either funded today by Muscular Dystrophy Association, or they can trace their start to mentorship from people who were funded from MDA. We know each other. Even though it sounds like we've been around 70 years, the field itself has grown up with us. And so we kind of know each other. We do all the kind of things together. So it's amazing. And on top of that, we are not only the leaders in the research area, we are leaders where it really counts for families and people who have the diseases. We have over 150 care centers we support across the nation. And those care centers are staffed with the leading scientists, researchers, physicians in neuromuscular disease, and people with these disorders could get the very latest treatments for these diseases from our centers.
Learning from each other and making sure that the next generation, there's a starting point and that they can keep going and moving forward together. So much of the research of everybody's researching in their own path and doing their own thing. It's not as special when you bring everybody together. So I know that's what that 2,000 members of that conference, it's everybody's on the same page with the same goals. And I would love to know what's something about the Muscular Dystrophy Association that you guys are doing to bring about more access and inclusion for your members.
I'm so glad you asked. Part of our mission is to make people's lives more independent. As someone who has a disability, a severe disability, you know how important it is to have some independence, some way to still contribute, and which you obviously are doing. And that's true for anyone with a disability. They want to have some kind of independence. But being independent with disability is really tough. Let me take a simple example that everybody can relate to. You want to get on an airplane and fly somewhere? You don't want to get on an airplane and fly anywhere. It's a
Good
nightmare
luck.
for people with disabilities. Why? First of all, there's no restrooms. You can't use any kind of restroom. Think about it if you're an able-bodied person, that you would not be allowed to use the restroom for any flight you took. Think about the anxiety that's going to cause. Think about the preparations that causes. Think about the lack of independence you have. Then, if you have to be in a wheelchair and you can't get up and walk to your chair, somebody's got to pick you up and move you. And guess what? There's nobody in the airline industry trained to do that. So the people that work with us at the Muscular Dystrophy Association, horror story after horror story of bones broken, ankles twisted, uncomfortableness, pain, coming off the flight.
Wheelchair's broken.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not just trying to get somewhere on the plane. Now you get off the flight and find out you don't have a wheelchair. What happened to my wheelchair? We lost it. Forget about losing luggage. Lose a wheelchair, which is your only means of transportation. Or, as you just pointed out, every single person I know has had their wheelchair damaged. And some of these wheelchairs, which have the technology, et cetera, they're $60,000, $70,000 or more wheelchairs. The damage is hugely expensive. I'm just talking about airplanes. Talk about you have a job. So many people with disabilities have jobs now. We are getting a little bit better, not perfect, but we are getting better at understanding we can hire, they can do the work, blah, blah, blah. But let's say you're in New York and and the way to get to your job is on a subway. Maybe not everybody knows what I'm talking about, but if you're ever in New York, try to get on a subway and look around and see where's the access for people in wheelchairs. How do you get through on the subway? It's a nightmare. It takes forever. I can go on and on. So one of the things that we do is we advocate strongly for people with disabilities to have better access to transportation. And that access led to something extraordinary just a couple of weeks ago. And what was it? On the 33rd anniversary of the passage for Americans with Disability Act 33 years ago, the White House held a conference, and they invited 15 groups to come to the conference. We were one of the 15. But what we didn't know when we were invited, when I walked in there, guess who was leading the conference? Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg.
Love that.
We're there talking to the leaders of America about and sitting at the table with veterans, with people that fund disability rights organizations. And we were one of the 15 invited to meet with the Vice President and the Secretary of Transportation. So
that's awesome.
We're pushing hard. Let me tell you, we're going to push hard.
I hope Kelly Buckland was right there as well.
That's true. She was there.
Love it. And with impressive research career with Muscular Dystrophy Association, you started in the 70s. I love that fact. And you guys have been funding groundbreaking research. I'm curious what your thoughts on how kind of technology and artificial intelligence will reshape the future research and treatments coming our way.
The positive thing that I'm going to say is it will move things faster. AI and AI technology, AI itself, can help identify therapies, drugs that can help us treat patients. So it will move things along much faster in ways that we can't do. And we meaning humans. When I started out, if I wanted to gain knowledge about any particular area, I'd go to a library. Okay, one guy going to a library. And I love that. I love going to a library. But a library cannot beat AI for massive amount of information gathering, selecting, and then bringing it to the table so we can do something with it. So that's where I think it's an immediate impact. It's already having an impact. Where I don't think it's going to help that much is the one thing that has never changed, and that is the human mind in terms of its ability to come up with creative new ideas. When I developed the gene for a task force for developing the understanding of where the genes are for muscular dystrophy, task force in genetics. And I looked for the smartest people in the world I could find, picked out 3, and then the Muscular Dystrophy Association provided the funds that I needed to give them all the dollars they needed whenever they needed them to go forward at a time when NIH wouldn't fund the research because they said there's no technology to find a gene. Okay. I wasn't using technology. I was using people's minds, creative people. It took 3 years for the discovery of the gene underlying Duchenne muscular dystrophy, the very first discovery of a gene underlying a human disease ever without knowing what that gene did until after.
That's awesome.
And we did it. Why? Because I believe and believed then, and I believed all my life, find the smartest, most creative people you can, put them on the project, give them the AI, give them the technology, and things will happen. Just given the technology, no, it ain't going to happen.
I like that full kind of circle approach of it's important to make sure you have a diverse group having a seat at the table, whether it's the technology, the researchers, members of the community, you name it. You need to have different angles, different approaches, different mindsets to really be able to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And I love
And you need the
that you
passion.
think like that.
And you need the passion. Remember what I was saying about my moving my research from my head to my heart. With you need to be. This is where the families and the people with neuromuscular disease are actually, when you think about it, the leaders in the advances that we're doing. Why? Because without their participation, you can't do this research. You can't do these clinical trials. What I tell physicians nowadays is if you diagnose someone with a neuromuscular disease, the very next thing you do is you have to prepare them for participation in a clinical trial
I love
and
that.
because they're partners with you. They are shoulder to shoulder with you in this. They're the ones that are teaching us where to go with the next steps in treating these disorders. So I hope everybody who hears this podcast understands that you're part of the solution now.
And the truth is, together we are stronger. So bringing
Yeah.
people together, beautiful things can happen. And
Yep.
I'd love to know what first comes to mind for you when you hear the word accessibility.
Ah, great question. The very first word that comes to mind with accessibility is power. Without accessibility, you are powerless. With accessibility, you have power. Power to do what you want, power to live your life the way you want. So accessibility is is a fundamental aspect of anyone's life. You need to be allowed to use whatever talents you have in whatever directions you would like to take them. So accessibility to not just the transportation we were talking about, but accessibility to jobs. The folks with neuromuscular disease are living longer, they're living stronger, they're living more independently. They're now, in the past, they didn't survive long enough, but now they're going to college, they're having careers. And now we're part of the group pushing to allow them careers. And the careers are all over the place. You're a lawyer. So we have some folks with neuromuscular disease, they want to be lawyers. Others want to be doctors and scientists studying their own disorder. Talk about motivation and passion and opportunity for advancement. So accessibility in careers, accessibility in transportation, accessibility in education. We still have a lot of work to do to help people get through the educational processes. MDA is starting now a scholarship program. We have so many people going to college, but having these disorders is very expensive. So we're starting a scholarship program to help people go to college, go through colleges. These are amazing, and it's all related to this powerful question you have on accessibility. It's all about accessibility.
That pathway to employment, everybody's kind of at their own unique stage within that journey. And being able to be available and provide resources at every step, but like also sharing those success stories that there's so many people in the paralysis community out in the workforce doing amazing things, having their voice, their wheels, you name it, being heard. And it's just, there's so much value to having a diverse workforce. And yeah, no, I applaud. I love everything you guys do, and I'm a big fan. And I want to end on this question with you, with our time coming up. Of if everyone can do a little bit more to make the world inclusive, what could that be?
I could talk about this for quite a while. It starts with looking at yourself. Look at yourself and ask yourself, what has happened recently that makes me feel good? Makes me feel good. And then the next thought, how can I do that for someone else? It starts always with yourself. The world would be a better place if people would honor the good feelings they get from others or the help they get from others, acknowledge the help. We all get help from others. We all get support from others. And we have to recognize what we get and then we have to, I think, part of our value system, and this is a trite phrase, but it says it, is you pay that forward. You do it for someone else. And when you do things for someone else in a genuine sense, like I'm saying, from a genuine feeling of I'm feeling good and I feel good that you feel good, you will get even better feelings from that. So let's all, everyone right now, think of something that's made you feel good recently and be happy with that. Let yourself be happy with that. And then think about have maybe you could do that and make someone else happy at the same time. That's
That
how.
giving heart that you're talking about, it's contagious. It spreads
Mhm.
all over the world. The more you give, the more you're able to help prop someone else up or give them the supports they need or the voice they need or the ear they need. You name it. It's just, there's so many ways to give. It's just do it. I love the way you're telling people to give what they can. But just Don, thank you so much for being our guest today on accessiBe's Spotlight Sessions. I really enjoyed all that you do and your words and your wisdom. But thank you, Don.
Thank you, Josh, and I am honored and privileged to be here, and I appreciate all the work you do for moving things forward. You are yourself an inspiration to us, so thank you very much for everything you do.
Thank you, Don. And to all of our guests, thank you so much for staying to the end of accessiBe Spotlight Sessions. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and to follow us at accessiBe_community. And as always, thank you so much for being on this journey with us. Take care, everyone. And Don, have a beautiful day.